Well, good morning. Brian will be up in a second. I'll start it out, but I just want to say thank you so much for inviting us to be here. We are absolutely thrilled. And man, when we started worship, from the time that after worship, I turned around and was like, "Oh wow, we got a house full now." So, we absolutely love missions conventions. We love being a part of them. But even when we were just out of college, we were newly married, just out of college, and we were the beneficiaries of being involved in a church that our pastor, like your pastor, um, realized the importance of co-laboring and the co-mission and missions in our local body. And so we always had lots of missionaries, and my favorite week, or the favorite month of the year, was October, because our whole month of October was missions convention, and we got to hear incredible stories of what God was doing all over the world. And this morning, if you've never been to a missions conference before, a missions convention before, like, congratulations. Like, you're going to get to see that you were part of something so much bigger than just your local church here. And God is working through the local church to do amazing things all over the world. Like, God is doing something new, and you guys are a part of it. And so we're just excited to share a little bit of that and where God has us today. And we're Brian and Misty Elliott. We are serving in the country of the United Kingdom. So if you think of the British Isles, Scotland is up here, and then you've got England, and then you've got Wales, and then across the water is Northern Ireland, and then Ireland is its own country. So the United Kingdom is Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, and Great Britain is only Scotland, England, Wales. So it's kind of like 4 countries in one country. So it's a little confusing, but we've served in the country of Wales since 2011 as church planters, and Brian's going to share what our main emphasis now is. But especially when you haven't been to a church before, we like to kind of share, like, God. People ask, like, how did you end up there? Like, how did God call you? And so I'm going to share just a bit about that briefly, but I also want to mention that we have 4 children. We have Sam, Livy, Audrey, and Will Thomas. Sam and Livy are both married. They married missionary kids. And then Audrey is in university, and Will Thomas is just about to graduate high school. So when we go back to Wales after our furlough, we'll be empty nesters with 1 grandbaby. So you can pray for us. So out of college, we got involved in our local church, and we began to feel that God had something for us to do with more of a full-time ministry, but we had no idea what that was. And so we just sort of prayed and looked for opportunities when there were needs in the church, and like, for instance, teaching 5th grade Sunday school. We felt like that was not our ultimate calling in life, but there was a need, and so we were like, okay, we can do that. And there was a need in music, and we said, okay, we can do that. Well, then there became a need. How many of you are familiar with Chi Alpha? Chi Alpha is the Assemblies of God outreach to our universities, to our university students. And there was a need at our local Chi Alpha, our local university, Kansas State University, which were originally from Manhattan, Kansas, the Little Apple. And there was a need because our Chi Alpha director was stepping down. And actually, we said no 3 times, and then finally we said yes to God. And so we were Chi Alpha directors at Kansas State University for 10 years. Well, something began to happen about 7 years into that, and that was we took our students to a missions conference in Louisville, Kentucky. And it was hosted by Chi Alpha and Assemblies of God World Missions jointly. And students from all over the country came. There were about 4,000 or 5,000 students. And the whole brunt of it was basically the missionaries, our AGW missionaries, flew back from all over the world. And they were to present missions creatively in a lot of different ways to the students and ask them to consider giving a year to missions and praying about a lifetime of missions. Now, we know that you are missionaries wherever you are. You are missionaries to your coworkers. You are missionaries to your neighbors. But there's something about getting out of our own setting, even for just a small-term missions trip, that God just works in us and gives us an even greater passion for the lost. And so at this conference, there was in the afternoons, the missionaries had set up these ballrooms to look and sound and feel like all the different regions of the world that you've got here on your walls, and they would do a presentation and let the students know, like, what is the need for missions in that part of the world and what would that look like, and they were absolutely wonderful. Well, Will Thomas was a baby and at the time, or he was little, and we were going to go through these experience rooms regionally, and I needed to run back and feed him, and so Brian and I just decided that we would kind of go through the rooms separately and meet up later. So I had been through like the Africa room and the Eurasia experience, and then I was going to go through the Europe room. And so I'm walking down the hallway into the room, and it opened up to the room to the right, and I'm pushing the stroller, not thinking anything in particular. I'm not like, singing a hymn in my head or anything. I'm just walking. And the Holy Spirit fell in the middle of the hallway. I burst out in tears. I knew it had something to do with like just an overwhelming burden for Europe. But at the same time, I'm thinking, man, I'm on a fruitcake. I'm just like, just bawling in the middle of the hallway for no apparent reason. And so I kind of pulled myself together and went through the experience. And I don't remember much of that, but met up with Brian later eventually. And I said, hey, did you go through the Europe room? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, what did you think? And he said, well, the experience itself was fine, but the weirdest thing happened to me in the middle of the hallway on the way in. And so we compared notes and realized that God had done this supernatural thing in the middle of the hallway separately to both of us. So we thought, well, wow, what does that mean? And we just came to the conclusion that we were to pray for Europe. So we began to pray for Europe. Well, that was January. The next August, we had a new batch of students come to Kansas State University, and so we're busy, at the beginning of the year trying to get them all involved and start the discipleship. And we had a freshman that was roommates with a guy from England, and there was another girl that was an exchange student from England as well. And our freshmen would drag them to Chi Alpha every week. Do not underestimate the power of an invitation and bringing people. And this girl, Sophie, would sit in church or sit in Chi Alpha, and during worship, she was an atheist, but she would have tears streaming down her face. We knew that God was working on her. Well, eventually, she does give her heart to the Lord, and we baptize her, and when her year at K-State came to an end, then we were trying to find a church that she could get involved in as soon as she got back to her university in Britain. And we found it quite difficult. And she got there, and she, for one reason or another, she found it quite difficult. And so we began to think, okay, we've got a young person that's actually looking for a church, and she's having a difficult time. We began to pray for the United Kingdom. So now it's from Europe to the United Kingdom. Well, then the next year and a half, when God is speaking to you, and maybe we're just like dense and we're not getting it, or maybe he's just confirming it in a lot of different ways. But the UK just started coming up all the time, over and over and over. We'd go to a special service, and the guy would be talking about the UK. We'd open a magazine. It would be about the UK. We'd turn on the radio. Someone would be talking about the UK. It was everywhere. And so, we're starting to get, okay, God is obviously saying something now. Like, we may not be the geniuses, but we get this. And so the thing was, though, that the Assemblies of God World Missions at that time was not sending missionaries to Britain, and we knew that, and we needed the invitation from the British Assemblies of God. And so, but things kept happening, and one day I was vacuuming my house, and something else had just happened, and I just had this moment. Have you ever had that moment where you're just like, I have had it, I have got to know, I've got to do something? And so I called AGGMM headquarters, and I just got the switchboard person. I said, hey, I need to talk to whoever is in charge of Northern Europe. And they said, oh, that would be a guy named Tim, and he lives in the Netherlands. And so immediately I'm like, oh, man. And they said, oh, but he's in the country, and I think he's in the building today. And so they got Tim on the phone. I said, Tim, this is who we are. This is what we feel like God is speaking to us, but we understand it's not a possibility. And at this point, I just need to hear you say it's not a possibility so that we can refocus and go back to what we're doing. And there was silence on the phone, which is sometimes an unnerving thing. And then he says, well, Misty, it's interesting that you're calling me today, because you're right, we have not had the invitation from the British Assemblies of God to send personnel until just a few days ago. And he said, we decided as a leadership team that we were not going to tell anyone this because sometimes Americans have a romanticism with Britain, or, it's English speaking, so seemingly it might be easier. It's not. And he said, we just as a leadership team decided that we were going to pray that God would have the right people call us. And here you are calling me today. So my jaw was on the floor. I called Brian after, and I said, you are never going to guess what has happened. Like, it got real all of a sudden. And so then 6 months later, Tim was back in the country. We met with him at ironically, the next World Mission Summit. And he said, this is what they need. Churches are closing left and right. There is a massive shortage of pastors. Britain is, you may not be aware, but is very much functionally a post-Christian country, particularly in Wales. And it's he said it's dire, and they need church planters. And so we kind of looked at each other, and those 3 years just sort of sealed at that moment, and we looked at each other and said, okay, we'll do this. Now, we did wake up the next morning and think, what in the world did we just do? But no, we knew that that's what we were supposed to do. And so we moved in 2011 to Cardiff, the capital, and we planted a church in 2012 in our living room. And then we went on to replant another church, and we're still pastoring that church, but it's going really well. And to sum up, God is faithful, is he not? And when we are willing to just say yes, small yeses on our journey. Yes, God, I'll do that. Yes, I will teach 5th grade Sunday school. Yes, I will take a casserole across the street and have a conversation. I will talk to somebody in the grocery store. Yes, I will do that. Yes, I will do that. He is faithful to use those small yeses and those small steps of obedience day by day by day to get us exactly where he wants us to be. Not for us, but for his kingdom. It is not about us at all, is it, folks? And so I'm going to hand it off to Brian, but I just want to say thank you. And I also want to just say we are a lot of churches all over the country. And it is the missions-focused churches and the outward-focused churches where people are interceding for other people to come to Christ that are the healthy, growing churches. So I commend you. And thank you for having us. And I'm going to be out back after. I want to talk to you, have prayer cards. Thank you.
So we're in Wales. It's 2011. We move our family of little kids all the way to Wales in the United Kingdom, as Misty explained. And we get to learn something this morning. Our brother who spoke so well of Wales, and it's true where we live in southern Wales, they have beautiful accents. You'll get to hear some of that in a video we're going to play in a little bit. But up north of us, Wales has its own language. And in the western part of Wales and in northern Wales, there are places where English is the second language, and children don't learn English until they go to grade school. Misty and I took a year of Welsh. It's one of the oldest languages in the world. And the streets are in Welsh. They're Welsh names, and the towns are, of course, named after Welsh things. And so, if anything, we took a Welsh class just so we could be able to pronounce things better. And so I'll give you an example. In Wales, in northern Wales, there's a little tiny village that is known for having the longest name in the world. And if you were to go there, you would find a little train platform with a sign above. Normally there's it would have the village name at the platform. This one, the letters are about this tall, and the sign is about as long as these two pews put together. And little kids love memorizing this name because it's so impressive to say it. So after I say it, I will expect you to learn it, and we'll have to say it together, okay? But across the sign, it says, Llanfair Pwysgwingis Gogeres Windropo Santasilio Gogogoch. Okay, your turn. No takers? It literally means like the town by the village, by the well, by the tree, down by the church, all this kind of stuff. That's what it means. But Wales, they're fiercely proud of their own identity. They don't like to be affiliated with the English. When there's rugby season and football, that's soccer translated for our American audiences, They love playing England because they want to see England lose. And Ireland and Scotland and Wales always band together and root against the English. But just so you know, if you ever get to go, do not make the mistake, as we have and many of our friends have, of assuming that Wales is a county in England. If you say that, you may have a bloody nose afterwards. The Welsh are fiercely proud of their nation, and that's where we find ourselves in Wales in 2011. In 2012, we planted Capital City Church in the capital city of Cardiff. There's a university there, so we found ourselves naturally with university students, and we're building up our church with young people, young professionals, young students. And in 2015-16, we started making that transition to hand off that local church to a local leadership team. That's what we do. We start churches, and we raise up local leaders and hand it off to them. And then we went up into the valleys, not too far, a village not too far away, that was without a pastor for about 3 years. Those in leadership said, Brian and Misty, would you help this church? They're gonna close. And so we said, sure. We took on this church with 10 or 12 people, Bedwest Pentecostal Church, or as it said above the door with the sign that had letters missing, it said Bedwest Pentextal Church. So we had our work cut out for us, but we changed the name to Hope Church, put up a new sign, and man, God is doing great things. We are now working on moving to 2 services and expanding to another building. I say that, and it's fun to say that, but you also have to realize that our church building only seats 70 people. So when we have hey, we're moving to 2 services, I get to brag to our American audiences, and they're thinking, man, they must have thousands coming in. It's like, no, we got about 60, and we're about over, and we started with 12, and we have 60 now, and we're expanding. And so God's doing great things in the nation of Wales. However, as we prepare to hand this church off, we go back to something that we started as church planters in Cardiff that we really have found that we've grabbed the tiger by the tail. Sometimes you attempt to do something for God, and it's like that. God takes you for a spin, doesn't he? It's like you never could have imagined what God's going to do with it, and that's what happened with us. You see, when we were still with Capital City Church, we were meeting with our leadership team in our church. When we started the church, it was in our house, in our living room. It eventually moved on. But we still have our leadership teams in our kitchen, around the kitchen table. And we were talking about what we could do as a church to bless the community, to bless the city. Because as a church, it doesn't matter how old a church you are, if you want to be a successful, biblically minded church, there's 3 things you want to do, okay? Only 3. They take on different forms in that, but basically 3 things. You want to see lost people saved, you want to see saved people discipled, and you want to see something in your community to you want to bless your community, to change your city, to do that. And so we were in this third element, like, what are we going to do to bless Cardiff? What does Cardiff need that the church can provide that's not already being provided? And that was key, because there was homeless things, there was food pantries and homeless shelters and things like that. So we thought, where's an area that's not being reached? And we remembered back to our time in Manhattan, Kansas. Interestingly, if you ever watch New Year's Eve celebrations, some of them I think Fox News did, and maybe NBC did as well, but they will send reporters to Manhattan, Kansas, and simultaneously, you're an hour apart, but you'll have the Big Apple celebration, and then they'll have reports live from the Little Apple. It's a lot of fun, but that was our hometown in Kansas. The church there did this thing. They've done it over 20 years. They're still doing it now, called Royal Family Kids Camp. Has anyone here ever heard of Royal Family Kids Camp? There's 1 or 2 hands raising. And I see that smile on that face back there. She's like, because if you know about it, if you know, right? Right. She's like, Royal Family Kids Camp is a church-based summer camp for children in foster care, ages 6 to 12. The idea is churches across the country, there's over 200 of these in the United States. They're an independent ministry, but they're a Bible-based Christian ministry. They partner with local churches to reach children in these local churches' neighborhoods, okay? And the idea is we bring them together into the cathedral of the outdoors, and we teach them about the God who created them. We teach them songs of faith. We show them a great time. We surround them with people who love them. Some of them, their family trauma is what put them in foster care in the first place. We try and do some things to recreate healthy, wholesome family. We have a camp grandma and grandpa that are there to read stories and sneak candies behind behind the back, just to bless the little kids. We have activities. We have woodworking. We have fishing. We have swimming. We have all of these things, wonderful things. And we see amazing things happening, not only in the children. We see children coming to faith. We see children who you start seeing a change, possibly in the trajectory of their lives. I mean, foster kids, if you're in foster care, your odds of going into prison, being on drugs, or going into the streets are exponentially higher than other children, okay? We see the possibility through these camps and mentoring clubs of these kids' trajectory changing just enough to maybe avoid those things and possibly change or interrupt the cycle of abuse in their families, okay? And this is the church doing this. We believe that every good thing in the world that God wants to do starts in the local church somehow. And it's best when the local church does it. So these are individual things that individual churches across the country do. Our church in Manhattan has been doing it for years. We never took part in it because we were on staff and we had other things to do, but we saw the change in our people. And as a pastor, I'm thinking, well, it'd be great to help the kids, but man, it would change our people too. And so we decided to think about what this would look like in South Wales. And it quickly dawned on us that there was nothing like this in Wales or in the UK or anywhere in Europe. We learned that quickly because as we started branching off and talking to people about it, we realized we had three problems. The first is which we didn't have any relationship with foster kids. We didn't have any relationship with social services. And as we met with people in social services, this is the response that we got. Very polite, very kind, thank you very much, but we're the professionals, let us handle it. See, they weren't used to, like in America, we're used to the church and state partnering up in the prisons and things like that. That's really not seen a whole lot in Europe. So we had no relationship with kids. And when you do a camp, you kind of need campers, right? So that was strike one. The next issue we had, when you have a camp, you need volunteers. And when you have a camp for foster kids, you need even more volunteers that are background checked and trained, what we call trauma-informed carers. They understand that the children that they are working with are not just regular kids, okay? They have seen things that many adults have never seen before in their lives: violence, abuse, neglect, these kind of things. So we needed volunteers. We needed more volunteers for our camp than we had adults in our church. Well, strike that. Then we had people in our church. We were just a little church plant. We just had, maybe 40 people tops, and we needed 40 trained, background-checked adults to do our camp. Strike two. The third thing you need, you could probably guess, is the funds. We didn't have money. To do 5 days of camp, we needed more money than we had in our church annual general fund. Strike three. We sat around our kitchen table with our church leadership team, young people, full of energy, but maybe not full of faith, because they told us, they said, Brian and Misty, we love the idea. We just think your vision's too big for us. We don't see how we can accomplish it. So, Misty and I prayed, because when you're planting a church and you realize your church has a faith issue, that's a big thing for a pastor, isn't it? And you want to do everything you can to help show faith, to help model faith, but also teach faith. And God is the best teacher of faith. If you ever pray for faith, let me tell you how God often does it. He puts you up against a situation that you are not equipped to tackle. And here's the thing. We as missionaries, we can call back to our network of faithful supporting churches and say, hey, we're in need of some special projects funds. Can you help us? Misty and I determined that we weren't going to do that, because we didn't want people to say, well, we did it because Brian and Misty made some phone calls. They needed to see God at work. So we said, Lord, this is your thing. If you want this to happen in Cardiff, you need to make it happen, and we'll just trust you for it. And I wish I had more time, because God provided miraculously. He provided the funds. He provided the people. He even provided the campers. And I'm proud to say, in 2016, we had the first Royal Family Kids Camp in all of Europe, right there in southern Wales. And we had 23 campers. We had 47 volunteers. And when we paid all of our bills, Hold on. Because when we paid all of our bills, we had money left in the bank and we didn't have to touch our church budget at all. God, now you can clap for that because God is. And you know what else we had? We had a church full of people. It's like, wow, maybe God can do some things. And we had a church on fire, not only for the Lord, but for helping children in need. And we have continued to do that camp every year with the exception of the COVID years. And funny thing happened in around 2017 or so. We realized that the only way, our camps were maxed out. And the only way we were going to reach more kids, because there's more than 100 kids in the UK that go into foster care every day. Last time I looked, it was 109 kids a day go into foster care. And we have in 2018, our camp had 50 campers, 76 volunteers, and we had a waiting list of kids. So we're like, well, what do we do? Well, we decided to do what they do here in the States, and that's take the model of kind of a franchise type thing. Well, we put the program together, the training, the materials, the resources, and all that stuff, and we find local churches to reach children in their area. We had to change the name from Royal Family Kids Camp to Starfish Kids Camp. We had to change it from Royal Family Kids Camp because you know how hard it is to raise money to send the Royal Family kids to summer camp? I just heard that King Charles inherited the estate of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II. It was like 676 million pounds, which is about it's about $1 billion. So that's a lot of money. They can pay for their own bloomin' camp, you know. Our kids don't have anything. And so we changed it to Starfish Kids Camp. That story, if you might remember, it's a well-known story of this man. He sees a little boy on the beach. There's all these starfish that have been washed up, and he's picking up them one by one and throwing them back in the ocean. And the man says to him, "What are you doing, son? There's thousands here. You're never going to make a difference." And the boy picks up another one. He throws it in. He says, "It made a difference to that one, didn't it?" That's the idea behind Starfish Kids Camp. We started a nationwide charity, and I'm happy to say COVID did not shut us down. We did have to pull back, and we didn't have camp, and we had online mentoring for 2 years. But we're back online we are back up to speed. We have a full in-person camp again, and we had several churches join us that want to do the camp in their neighborhood. We were happy to say camp number 2 starts next year in Wales. We have a camp that'll be starting up in Belgium soon. We had a team from Belgium come, heard about what we were doing, wanted to see how they could do it in their neighborhood. And we have some colleagues of ours that are going to Italy, and they're going to be doing a camp in Italy, and they're going to be working at our camp this summer so that they can learn more about what it is we do. And this thing, we're going to go back. This is why we say this is a different world for us, because we're church planters. We're not children's ministry people. Friends, pastor, do not invite me to come speak to your kids. I'll love it. They'll be bored out of their minds. I'm just not good at it. Misty won't let me talk with kids in a children's center. You know, we used to do that when we first started in missions. They'd say, "Can you speak to our kids and do it?" Sure. And I did it once, and after that, Misty said, "Never again. You're not allowed. I'll take care of this. I can do this." I am not a children's ministry kind of guy. But we start things. And the Lord asked us to start this thing that we were completely unequipped and unprepared to do. And He did something with it. And now we are going back. We're still going to oversee the church that we've been pastoring because there's some mentoring things we need to work on with our pastor, just some schooling and education things. But when we go back, our number one job is going to be equipping churches to do these camps and mentoring clubs across England, Scotland, Wales, the Islands, and beyond. The need is there. They're asking us to do this, and we want to go back and see more children changed. And let me tell you, you might be thinking, what? I mean, I've been to summer camp, a bunch of goofiness. What happens at that to change a child's life who's been abused or neglected or abandoned? Well, I told you we teach them songs, right? Well, let me back up a little bit, because there's things at camp that we do specifically because of the nature of the children we work with. I told you that already. One of the things we do is we have a birthday party for all the kids, because sometimes kids will be in 3 or 4 homes a year in their foster care years. And so oftentimes they have to move at a moment's notice. They have to pack up all their things in a plastic trash bag. And so we'll make sure that all the kids get their own backpack that's theirs. They can put their stuff in. And we make sure, as they're going from house to house, sometimes it's hard to remember their birthdays. You have a kid move into your home. You're a great family. You're loving on them. You've been prepared and trained by the state to help these kids. You don't realize that it's their birthday next week or today or it was last week or whatever it was. And we realized a long time ago that a lot of these kids have never had a birthday party. So we put together a birthday party for every kid. Every child gets cake. Every child gets presents. Every child gets a memory book because a lot of these kids don't have photographs from when they were a child. You remember when Uncle Bob showed up at the party and he was, kind of out of his mind, and you got pictures of that. Or your crazy Aunt Margaret, she passed away a long time ago, but you can go home. There's a book somewhere that has photographs in there. When you were at your first haircut or whatever it was, these kids don't have that. They'll grow up with no photographic memories of their childhoods. So we have a photographer at camp that follows them around, takes photographs of every child, puts them in a memory book when they're having fun with their friends, with their volunteers, and we give them their memory books at the end of camp. We do certain things for them, but let me back up a little bit to what I was originally saying. Circle back to that. On the Thursday night of every camp is the birthday party. And after their bag of presents, which they all go crazy for, we give them their final present of the night. And it's an MP3 player that's been preloaded with all the songs that they've been singing, all the Bible lessons that they've been learning, that they can take home and listen from there until their batteries wear out. And we even send them home with new batteries, extra batteries. Well, two things, two nights, Monday night and Thursday night, I had a similar job. Normally I'm helping with the sound, or I help cook or whatever it is. I do something in the background, but I always help with the overnight staff because we have to have people stay up all night long from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. and then again 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. We have shifts come in, a group of people that will stay up all night long to sit in the hallways. The doors to the kids' rooms are open. We just kind of make sure that everyone's going to sleep, that nothing out of sorts is going on or anything like that. So it was my duty, my time, that Monday night. Kids are starting to go to sleep. Kind of settling in, making noises as kids do. And then I hear something coming out of a room, and I walk over to it. I think, what's going on in there? And I put my head kind of into the door frame, and I hear a child talking in his sleep. And I thought, oh, that's cute, kids talking in their sleep. And so I listened to what he was saying. He was saying things along the lines of, please don't touch me like that anymore. That hurts. Please stop doing that. He was talking about his abuse in his sleep. Fast forward to Thursday night, the last night of camp. They've had their birthday party. I'm on night duty again. Noise is coming from the same room. And I walk over and I think, what is he talking about tonight? And I walk over and I lean my head towards his room, and he's not talking in his sleep. He has his earbuds in, singing along to one of the songs that he's been taught that week, singing, I am not forgotten, I am not forgotten, I am not forgotten, God knows my name. One night he's talking about his abuse. A couple nights later, he's singing about the God who has created him and knows his name. I want to show you a video from camp. It's just a general, so you'll get to see what we do and how fun it is. And then I want to say just a few words after that, if that's okay, Pastor, about your missions time. Okay, so go ahead and play that video, and then I'll come back up.
By far the main reason that we're here is kids. They're kids who come from really difficult backgrounds. They've got lots of social issues in the background and actually have had generally quite a rough start to life. And actually this camp is amazing that it gives exactly those children an amazing opportunity to come and just be loved and do really fun stuff.
They're in a place where every single adult here is 100% for them. If they're sad, there's someone to comfort them. If they're laughing, there's someone to laugh with them.
The amazing thing about Starfish Camp is that it offers so much that every child can achieve something. So it opens up a huge new world for them, variety of things and skills that maybe they wouldn't necessarily have achieved at home.
All of the activities on camp seem to just bring the best out of children, from finding out new talents that they didn't even know they had, to pushing their physical and mental boundaries. It really kind of brings out the very, very best in these kids.
Creating an environment where you praise kids and use positive words of affirmation to build them up, regardless of their backgrounds. All kids can benefit from that. And you can see the kids as they respond to all of this positive environment. It has a tremendous effect on them.
I guess for all of us, our childhoods are really important. They're our formative years, and actually it's really important developing good relationships. It's really important for kids to have a really good time and to be able to learn lots of social skills, interacting with other children, interacting with adults, and also being just shown that they're loved and that there are opportunities in the world.
We know that it's having an effect because we've seen it over 4 years. And we've seen children leave us to go on into high school much stronger and much more resilient and much happier than when they first came to see us.
I'm not completely sure of the numbers, but I know that the first camp several years ago was only a handful of kids. And the second year it grew, and the third year we had to move to a different premises because we outgrew our first premises. And this year again we've grown again. So I'm very confident that as time goes by, carers, social workers become very aware of the impact that this camp has on the lives of children. And camp grows and more kids are being influenced, and that's wonderful. But we will never be able to reach great numbers of kids with just one camp.
These camps need to go further afield. They need to go out into England, into Scotland, so that children there can have the same opportunity to grow and develop and to have some of the damage undone in a small way, some healing for their hurts that have been in their lives.
If we can see it growing, if we can see people getting involved, the number of kids then that we can reach is just endless.
I just think it makes such a difference to them and their lives.
We can't help every single child in the UK or in Europe, but we can make a difference to a good number of them.
Isn't that cool? Isn't that fun? You know what's even more cool, at least I think it's cool. You know, we went to Wales and we started a church. We helped start another church. We're doing these camps. You know, it took faith to do that. It took faith to pack up our family and go to Wales. And I'm not here to pat ourselves on the back because I'm going to go a couple steps further than that. It took faith for a church to say, yeah, we'll be able to support you on a monthly basis. And I am convinced that we would not be where we are today, that would not happen if it weren't, if it weren't for the fact that we had some people that wrote a check for $10 extra a month to help support missionaries in their church. Let me share a quick little analogy to this. You know, the Bible says in Hebrews 11 that without faith it is impossible to please the Lord. He doesn't say without knowledge. And we all want to know things, don't we? I want to know where we're going. I like my GPS. I wish there was a Maps app for faith that says, Lord, I want to go from here to completely blessed. Plug in that destination. How long is it going to take me? Where am I going to have to turn? Where's the toll? How to help me avoid the toll and avoid the heavy traffic. That's not how faith works. You see, when you do something for God, He requires faith. And faith is not just belief. Faith is trust. Faith is when you find yourself against an obstacle, a wall that says this can't be done, or you probably shouldn't do this, okay? When I was a kid, here's my analogy. When I was a kid, I had, my first car was a 1961 Volkswagen Beetle. I mean, it was tricked out. I thought it was pretty cool. It was only had 1,100 cc's. That's like a motorcycle engine in the back of a car, right? Well, I only had it for less than a year because I lived on a country road across from a grain elevator, and in the summertime I was driving home and a grain grain truck pulled out in front of me and smashed. Car was done. So my second car, my parents promised me it would be just as cool. So my second car is my little brag for this morning. But before I do that, I want to ask, and I want you to tell me, does anyone here did they have a cool car when they were a kid? Okay? What did you have? 65 Chevy Impala SS. That's a nice car. Probably had a nice engine in it, like a 350 or 396 or something like 383. Yeah, yeah. 283. Okay. What did you have? 1949 Buick. I had one gentleman at a church one time, I used this, and he said, I had a 1929 Model A. And I said, how old are you, sir? I have to qualify this because sometimes I've had people say, I had a Mustang. I was like, well, hold on a second, sir. Because my sister had a 1976 Mustang too, and it was just a Pinto with racing stripes, okay? So, and so he'll tell me it was a 1967 fastback with a 289 engine. That's great. My second car, you ready for this? 1962 Rambler American. Now, for those of you who don't know, a Rambler American is not a cool car. I would pull up to a gas station and like I have a friend who's got 5 Corvettes. He pulls up at a gas station in his 59 Corvette convertible, and people are like, yeah, man, that is so cool. I pull up in my 62 Rambler, people are like, we had one of those, you know? 196 cubic inches of raw power. Steering wheel was this big. Let me talk about the steering wheel. You got it right there. Pick that up and show everyone. The reason why, ma'am, you don't know this, but that is my car. Seriously. I sold my car several years ago to a guy who was a writer for Hemmings Motor News. And they did a calendar of old ugly cars, like Studebakers and Ramblers. And if you look up 1962 Rambler American, that's the picture you get. That's my car, okay? So anyway, steering wheel is huge, all right? Young people don't know about big steering wheels because they've grown up with the luxury of a little engine inside your engine that helps you turn the steering wheel, okay? We had this big one. And if the car was sat still, that steering wheel, there's a lot of play in it, but it wouldn't move your tires. Your tires weren't going to turn. You're going to go left or the right. But here's the thing, with those old manual steering cars, when the car started moving, you could begin to steer. You remember that? Sometimes we pray to God, God, we're waiting for you to move. And I get that. There's time and a place for that. But I think a lot of times God is saying, son, daughter, I'm waiting for you to move. Because when we move, we show faith with our feet. We show faith with our actions. I don't know how this is going to work out, Lord, but I'm going to trust you. So I'm going to put my car in gear, and I'm going to push on the accelerator, and we're going to start moving, and I'll just trust you. Friends, for some of us, this is our accelerator. Let me explain. We have the opportunity in the coming days and weeks. You have the opportunity to engage the world for Christ, to affect people, to help us with children, foster kids in Europe, to help church planters in Malawi and other places where you've seen them on the video today, to see people come to faith, to see people, girls who have been trafficked, little boys who have been trafficked by sex traffickers. We have the opportunity. We can step up and help and be a part of that. See, we didn't do all this. We didn't. We did. But Brian, I don't know what this is. It's hard for me to even tithe. Let me tell you. You may be up against a wall of financial questions and fears. And I'm not asking you to do anything irresponsibly, but I am asking you to pray over these things and how God can get your Rambler moving down the road. Some of you have been giving faithfully for years, and that's amazing. Thank you very much. Have you ever considered maybe giving an extra $20 a month? Some of you have never really understood how this thing works. Well, I tell you what, we Assemblies of God churches all over the country, we all give, and it helps when, how many, I'm not going to ask because I can guess. You probably get called several times a week by missionaries. And I know you want to say yes to every single one of them, but he can't. You know why? Because the mission support isn't there yet with the church. So if you take this, and you've never done this before, pray about it over the next days and weeks. Next week, you're going to have an opportunity to fill these out. Pray about it. Because if you, above your tithe, you want to support the church. How many here like to have a warm church in the wintertime? How many here like to have snacks for the kids when we send them down to children's church? That all has to be paid for. How many here like to have staff here to help us and to teach us? That's all part of your tithe. If you take an extra 5, 10, 20, and commit to that, that helps the church. That helps him say yes, but it helps you become a part of what we're doing and what other people are doing. Just want you to pray about that. This isn't about money. God will do this with or without us, but he prefers to do it with us. You know why? Because you learn something. You learn that when the world says no, doesn't matter if God says yes. All right? So let me pray, and then I'm going to hand it back to Pastor here. Lord, you have done great things in the world. You're continuing to do great things. I'm thanking you that we have been able to be a part of that. Lord, I pray, God, for this church and this community. I pray for the faith. I pray for their ramblers to get running and going down the road and moving smoothly. And let them see, Lord, as we saw with our camps, as our church saw with our camps, Lord, I pray that this church will see that as they step out, when the rest of the world says it can't be done, when their finances say it can't be done, when their job says it can't be done, but you say it will be done, when we step forward and I pray, God, that they will learn what faith is. Because when they learn what faith is, they are blessed. And when they are blessed, the church is blessed. And it grows and it empowers more. And great things will happen across the world. And great things will happen right here in this township. Yes. Anoint our hearts for giving today, tonight, for the week, and for the rest of the year, Lord. We thank you for loving us and treating us like royalty. In Jesus' name we pray.